The ancient city of Babylon, gates of the gods. Dawn of Babylon. Imagine, for a moment, a city where legend and history intertwine, where massive gates of glazed blue bricks rise like walls of the heavens, and where the river Euphrates flows steadily through its heart, carrying with it the rhythm of life. This was Babylon, a city that has fascinated travelers, scholars, and dreamers for thousands of years, a city whose name itself means Gate of the Gods. As dawn breaks over the Mesopotamian plain, the horizon glows with soft hues of gold and rose. The rising sun reflects off the baked mud brick walls that stretch for miles, surrounding the vast settlement. From a distance, the city appears almost mythical, its towers shimmering in the heat, its ziggurats climbing toward the heavens. Even before you step inside, Babylon promises wonder. The first sound that greets the day is the murmur of the Euphrates. The river moves calmly, carrying boats with traders, fishermen, and farmers returning from fertile lands. Along the banks, early risers gather water, wash clothes, and prepare for the day's tasks. The air is alive with the gentle chorus of life, birds gliding above the river, merchants calling softly to their companions, and the distant bleating of goats being led to pasture. Within the city, the narrow streets awaken. The smell of fresh bread, baked in clay ovens, drifts from homes. Potters open their shops, displaying vessels that gleam in the morning light. Children chase each other through courtyards, their laughter echoing against mud brick walls. And above all, the towering ziggurat, known as Etemenanki, casts its shadow across the settlement, a reminder of the gods, of the mysteries of the heavens, and of humanity's eternal search for meaning. Yet Babylon is not only stone, brick, and grandeur. It is also the sound of families gathering for meals, the whisper of scribes recording trade on clay tablets, and the quiet devotion of priests preparing offerings in temples. It is a city of life, where every moment is woven into a larger rhythm, one that continues across the centuries. For those listening tonight, Babylon is more than history. It is a world of calm, of flowing rivers, gentle routines, and star-filled skies. And as we step deeper into its gates, let the rhythm of this ancient city carry you into serenity, as if you too are walking its streets, resting in its gardens, and dreaming beneath the same stars that once watched over the people of Babylon. Through the Ishtar Gate. The city of Babylon was not entered quickly. It revealed itself slowly, as though the traveler were being prepared for the majesty within. The first sight for anyone approaching was the walls, vast, high fortifications of sun-baked brick that seemed to stretch endlessly. These walls were said to be wide enough for 2 chariots to ride side by side upon them, and their presence alone made the city feel like something more than human hands could have built. To pass beyond these defenses was to cross from the ordinary world into the extraordinary. And at the heart of this passage stood the most breathtaking entrance of all, the Ishtar Gate. Rising above the plain, it shimmered in the sunlight, its deep blue bricks gleaming as if lit from within. Upon the gate's surface marched rows of golden lions, bulls, and dragons, sacred animals of the gods, frozen in mid-stride. The lions, guardians of the goddess Ishtar, seemed alive, their manes rippling in the morning light. The bulls, sacred to Adad, brought strength, and the dragons, long and serpent-like, whispered of the mysteries of Marduk, Babylon's great protector. As you walk closer, The details emerge more clearly. Each brick has been glazed, polished to brilliance. The blue of the walls reflects the sky, giving the sense that one is not merely entering a city, but stepping into a piece of the heavens themselves. The animals, repeated in perfect patterns, seem to move beside you as you approach, as though guiding you onward. The gate itself is immense, dwarfing those who pass beneath it. Above, towers rise, their battlements sharp against the horizon. And yet, despite its size and power, there is a quiet dignity to the gate. It does not threaten. It welcomes. It reminds each traveler that they are entering a place favored by the gods, a place where heaven and earth are thought to meet. Passing beneath the archway, the world seems to change. The air feels cooler, shaded by the towering walls. The sounds of the plain fade, replaced by the hum of the city, the rhythm of footsteps, the laughter of children, the steady call of merchants. And straight ahead lies the processional way, a grand avenue paved with stone, leading deep into the heart of Babylon. This road, broad and carefully laid, is flanked by high walls, each decorated with more animals in relief. Here, too, lions stride proudly, their golden bodies catching the sunlight, their presence a reminder that Ishtar watches over every traveler. The processional way was not only for everyday use. It was the stage for Babylon's great festivals, most of all the New Year celebrations, when statues of the gods were paraded through the city. But even on a quiet morning, the avenue feels alive, pulsing with memory and ceremony. As you walk along it, you notice the details that make the city breathe. The sound of sandals brushing against stone, the scent of incense carried on the breeze from a nearby shrine, traders arranging clay pots and baskets of dates for sale, women with jars balanced upon their heads, moving gracefully through the crowd, scribes, seated cross-legged, scratching notes into clay tablets with their styluses. Every corner of the city seems to hum with life, yet there is no haste, no rush. Instead, there's a steady, unhurried rhythm, as though time itself flows differently here. And above it all, rising in the distance, is the ziggurat, a layered mountain of brick climbing toward the heavens. It draws the eye upward, reminding you at every step that this is no ordinary place. Babylon is not simply a city of walls and gates. It is a city of aspiration, of connection to the divine. As you move deeper along the processional way, the sounds soften. The voices of merchants fade into the background, blending into a tapestry of gentle noise. The clinking of pottery, the bleating of distant animals, the whisper of sandals on stone, all of it merges into a lullaby of ancient life. The bustle is not chaotic. It is ordered, harmonious. Each sound belongs. Each motion has its place. To pass through the Ishtar Gate was more than an entrance. It was an initiation, a crossing from the ordinary world into the sacred rhythm of Babylon. And as you walk this path in your mind, under the starlit guidance of history, you feel a quiet peace settle upon you. You are part of this city now, moving with its people, breathing its air, resting in its timeless calm. The markets of Babylon. The processional way does not only lead to temples and grand ceremonies, it also carries you into the heart of Babylon's daily rhythm, the markets. Here, beneath the shade of high brick walls, life unfolds with a kind of music all its own. The avenue opens into wide squares where traders set out their wares, their voices rising not in argument, but in a kind of steady chant, calling gently to passers-by, The marketplace is alive but not hurried. Instead, it breathes with the slow, measured heartbeat of a city, at ease with its abundance. The air carries with it a blend of scents. Sweet dates, freshly picked and glistening like small jewels, lie in neat piles upon reed mats. Clay jars of honey give off a golden fragrance, mixing with the earthy aroma of roasted barley and the faint spice of sesame oil. Beside them, baskets of figs, pomegranates, and melons add a richness of color, deep reds, glowing yellows, and soft greens, like pieces of sunlight caught and stored for the table. Moving further, the scent changes. You pass the stalls of the butchers, where cuts of goat and lamb are carefully displayed, salted and smoked for preservation. Fishermen, their faces weathered by the sun, offer gleaming river fish from the Euphrates, laid upon beds of cool reeds to keep them fresh. And yet, even here among the more rugged scents, the air feels calm, for nothing is hurried. Buyers linger, weighing their choices with quiet deliberation, while sellers smile patiently, waiting for the right nod, the right gesture. But it is not only food that fills the market. There are potters, their stalls filled with jars and bowls, lamps and pitchers, each piece shaped by hands that know the rhythm of clay and wheel. The surfaces bear simple patterns, some incised with delicate lines, others glazed to catch the light. Nearby, weavers unfold bolts of cloth, linen soft and pale, wool dyed with earthy colors, and on rare occasions, pieces touched with deep blue or red, colors that seem to carry a trace of royalty. Metalworkers, too, have their place. You hear the faint ring of hammer on bronze, a sound softened by distance, almost musical. Their tables display tools for farming, blades for hunting, and delicate ornaments, earrings, amulets, bracelets shaped into coils that gleam softly in the sun. Some wearers believe these trinkets carry the blessings of the gods, protection against illness or misfortune. As you drift through the market, you begin to notice not only the goods, but the people. Merchants from far-off lands, their garments and accents carrying whispers of distant places. Traders from the Persian highlands, bringing stone and lapis. Caravans from the Arabian deserts, their camels bearing frankincense and myrrh. From the east come spices, rare and precious, sealed in clay jars to preserve their strength. From the north, timber and metals. From the south, pearls and shells gathered from the sea. Babylon's market is not merely a place of trade. It is a crossroads of the world, where rivers of culture and story meet. And yet, amidst this great mingling, the pace remains steady. The calls of sellers soften into a background hum. The shuffling of sandals merges with the faint ring of bronze. The scent of fruit and spice curls into the warm air. It is a living painting, filled with movement, sound, and color. Yet it flows gently, like water down the Euphrates. Children wander between the stalls, clutching small coins given to them by their parents, laughing as they select a sweet or a small clay toy. Women barter for grain, their voices calm, unhurried. Men gather in quiet conversation, exchanging news of fields, herds, or distant travel. The market is not only a place of exchange, it is the very heart of Babylonian life, where community is woven day after day, thread by thread. As you walk through this scene in your mind, you feel yourself slow too. The rhythm of the market draws you in. The clinking of pottery, the murmur of voices, the scent of sweet fruit, they blend together until they feel less like a marketplace and more like a gentle lullaby of daily life. And, as the sun drifts overhead, casting long shadows across the processional way. You sense that Babylon is not only a place of towering gates and temples of the gods, it is also a place of ordinary joy, of food shared, of laughter exchanged, of small treasures carried home at the end of the day. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. There are places in the world where myth and reality blur together, where memory and imagination entwine so tightly that one cannot always tell which is which. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are such a place. Ancient writers tell us of them in tones of awe, as though even they could hardly believe their own eyes. Gardens, they said, not planted upon the ground, but lifted high into the air, tier upon tier of greenery that cascaded down like waterfalls of leaves and flowers. Imagine yourself stepping through the bustling streets of Babylon, past the markets, past the processional way, and finding a hidden entrance that leads upward. Stone staircases curve along massive terraces, each one layered with brick and bitumen, engineered not only to hold soil, but to carry life itself. The stone is cool beneath your hand, yet warm in color, rising strong and steady, as though built to withstand both time and legend. As you ascend, the air begins to change. The scents of the market fade away, replaced by something softer, sweeter. The perfume of blossoms, of roses and lilies, of herbs warmed by the sun. The sound of the city below grows faint, replaced by the trickle of flowing water, the whisper of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. Here, in the heart of a desert land, rises a sanctuary of green. Palms stretch upward, their fronds swaying softly. Vines spill over the edges of the terraces, tumbling down in curtains of green. Fruit trees bend with their gifts, figs, pomegranates, dates, their colors bright against the deep emerald of leaves. Flowers bloom in every shade, painting the air with fragrance as vivid as color. And then there is the water, for such gardens could not exist without it. Ingenious systems of pulleys and channels are said to have carried water up from the Euphrates, lifting life from the river to the heights of the terraces. The streams flow gently over stone, gathering in small pools where fish swim lazily, their movements sending ripples across the surface. The sound of water is everywhere, not loud but constant, a soft rhythm that soothes the ear and stills the heart. According to one story, the gardens were built by King Nebuchadnezzar II as a gift for his queen, Amytis of Media. She longed for the green hills of her homeland, for the forests and mountains far to the north. To ease her longing, the king raised up a mountain in the midst of the flat plain, a mountain not of stone, but of earth and root, branch and blossom. Whether the story is true, no one can say. Yet the image is powerful, a gesture of love made eternal in leaves and flowers. As you wander higher through these terraces, the city of Babylon stretches out below you, vast and golden in the sunlight. The blue-tiled walls of the Ishtar Gate gleam in the distance. The river winds like a silver ribbon through the plain. And above it all, this garden floats, suspended between earth and sky, as though the gods themselves had reached down and planted paradise here. The shade beneath the trees is cool and inviting. Birds nest among the branches, their calls soft and melodic, blending with the sound of flowing water. The air itself feels different here, fresher, lighter, as though one has stepped into another world. Perhaps this is why travelers, scribes, and poets wrote of the gardens with such wonder, carrying their descriptions across centuries. Some doubted whether they ever existed, Perhaps they were a dream, a vision too perfect to be real. Yet, whether they were stone and soil or only story and imagination, they have lived on, unforgotten. For sometimes what matters most is not the brick or the root, but the longing they represent, the longing for beauty, for peace, for a touch of paradise in a world that is often harsh. As you rest here in your mind, amid the shade of palms and the fragrance of blossoms, you realize the truth. The hanging gardens live not only in stone or in soil, but in the imagination. They rise wherever people dream of a place where nature and human hands meet in harmony. The sound of water continues, steady and soft, carrying you deeper into calm. The leaves sway above you, green against the sky, and Babylon, great and golden, seems to breathe beneath the shade of this eternal wonder. Temples and ziggurats of Babylon. At the center of Babylon, rising higher than the houses, higher even than the walls that encircled the city, stood the ziggurats, great stepped towers that seemed to touch the very edge of the sky. Unlike the gardens, soft with flowers and vines, these monuments were massive, solid, and solemn. They were not places of trade or leisure, but of reverence. Their form was deliberate, wide at the base, narrowing with each ascending level, each terrace drawing the eye upward, until at last it reached the shrine at the top. It was as though the builders sought to bridge the distance between earth and heaven, stone by stone, step by step. One of the most famed was Itamananki, the temple of Marduk, chief god of Babylon. Its name meant, the house that is the foundation of heaven and earth. And indeed, it seemed to be just that. Ancient descriptions tell of its height reaching nearly the clouds, each tier built with sun-dried bricks, glazed and strengthened with bitumen. To stand at its base was to feel small, as though one were gazing at a mountain, not of nature's making, but of human hands guided by divine vision. Climbing the ziggurat was a sacred act. Pilgrims would ascend slowly, circling around the terraces, their footsteps echoing on the baked clay steps. The air grew thinner with each level, the city below spreading wider and wider in view. At the summit, a shrine awaited, quiet, dim, perfumed with the smoke of incense. Here, priests performed rituals, offering food, drink, and prayer to Marduk, seeking his blessing upon the city and its people. It was not only the gods of Babylon who were honored in these high towers. Other temples dedicated to Ishtar, goddess of love and war, to Nabu, god of wisdom, and to Shamash, the sun god, filled the city with sanctuaries. Each temple was carefully aligned with the heavens, for the Babylonians believed the stars and planets guided human fate. The priests studied the skies from these heights, recording the dance of constellations, predicting eclipses, and searching for meaning in the endless canvas above. To walk through the courtyards of these temples was to enter another rhythm of life. The noise of the markets faded. Here there was chanting, the murmur of prayers, the quiet flicker of flames. Statues of gods stood in alcoves, their features carved with solemn dignity, their eyes set to watch over worshippers. Offerings of bread, dates, honey, and milk lay arranged on low tables, signs of devotion both humble and grand. Imagine standing within one of these temples, the coolness of stone beneath your feet, the air heavy with the scent of incense. Priests move slowly, their garments long and flowing, their voices rising in deep, rhythmic tones that echo against the walls. Outside, the sun blazes, but here, in the dim half-light, there is calm, a quiet so profound that it seems to draw you into stillness, as though the walls themselves are listening. The ziggurat towers above it all, casting a vast shadow across the city as the day moves on. In the early morning, its steps are golden, catching the first rays of dawn. At midday, it gleams with heat, the air shimmering around it. At sunset, its silhouette darkens against a sky painted red and gold, as though the heavens themselves are acknowledging its presence. And at night, beneath the stars, it stands silent, its form merging with the constellations, a bridge between earth and sky, dream and reality. To the people of Babylon, these temples and towers were not mere buildings. They were anchors of faith, symbols of order in a world often uncertain. They embodied the city's devotion to the gods, its pursuit of wisdom, its reverence for the cosmos. And as you picture them now, rising tier upon tier, you feel their weight not as stone, but as presence, a reminder that humanity has always reached upward, always sought connection with something greater, always yearned to touch the heavens, if only with prayer and imagination. Daily life in Babylon. Not every story of Babylon is one of kings, gods, or wonders. Much of the city's life was carried by the hands of ordinary people, whose days unfolded with a rhythm both simple and profound. At dawn, the city stirred slowly. The first light of the sun crept across the bricks of the houses, long and low, built of mud and clay. These homes, though modest in appearance, were carefully arranged, with central courtyards where families gathered. The courtyards held clay ovens where the day's bread was baked, its fragrance drifting into the morning air. The streets outside came alive with sound. Merchants rolled open their shutters, calling out greetings to neighbors. Farmers brought in baskets of vegetables, freshly cut from fields near the river, cucumbers, onions, beans, and barley. Women carried jars of water drawn from wells, balanced carefully on their heads. Children's laughter echoed between the walls, their footsteps light as they played with small clay toys or chased one another in the dust. The Euphrates River, always flowing, was central to life. Boats moved steadily along its waters, carrying goods to and from the heart of the city. Men cast nets, pulling in fish that glistened in the sunlight. Washermen worked along the banks, their hands pressing garments against smooth stones, the fabric snapping gently in the wind as it dried. The river gave life to the fields, the homes, the markets. Everything in Babylon flowed back to the water. Inside the homes, meals were simple but nourishing. Barley bread, cheese, dates, figs, and lentil stews were common. Honey sweetened both food and drink, while beer, brewed from barley, was poured into clay mugs. On special occasions, wine from distant lands was shared, its flavor both rare and cherished. Families ate together, seated on mats, sharing food from common bowls in a gesture of closeness and unity. Work filled much of the day. Craftsmen shaped clay into jars, bowls, and tablets. Scribes etched lines of cuneiform, recording everything from trade agreements to prayers. Weavers spun threads into cloth, while builders raised walls brick by brick. Farmers tended their crops in the fertile soil left by the floods of the Euphrates. Shepherds guided their flocks outside the city walls, their voices carrying across the fields as they called to the animals. And yet, life was not only work. Music was woven into the daily rhythm. Harps, lyres, and flutes added their melodies to gatherings. In the evenings, families sat beneath the stars, telling stories passed down from generations, tales of the gods, of heroes, of the flood that once covered the world. These stories carried both wisdom and comfort, binding people together in shared memory. Festivals brought moments of joy and community. The New Year, in particular, was celebrated with processions, feasts, and offerings to the gods. The city would glow with lanterns and firelight, and voices rose in prayer and song. Even in times of hardship, these celebrations reminded the people that they were part of something larger, a cycle of life that flowed as steadily as the river itself. The people of Babylon also valued knowledge. Schools existed for the children of scribes and priests, where young students pressed stylus into clay tablets, learning the intricate patterns of cuneiform writing. They studied mathematics, astronomy, and literature, guided by teachers who believed wisdom was as necessary as food or water. At night, the city softened. Lamps burned with oil, casting golden circles of light in the courtyards. Families lay upon mats, the cool breeze of evening flowing through open doorways. Above them, the stars glittered. The same stars studied by Babylonian astronomers, the same constellations that shaped their myths and guided their calendars. Children fell asleep to the murmur of their parents' voices, the lull of distant water, and the warmth of a city at rest. Daily life in Babylon was not always easy. Floods, illness, or the threat of war sometimes darkened the days. Yet woven into this life was resilience, a quiet strength born of community, tradition, and hope. The greatness of Babylon did not rest only in its gates or gardens, but in the steady hands of its people, who baked bread, told stories, raised families, and lived each day beneath the gaze of gods and stars alike. The wisdom of Babylon, law, learning, and astronomy. Though Babylon dazzled the world with its walls, its markets, and its temples, it was also a place where the mind and spirit reached beyond the visible. Here, wisdom was treasured, written into clay, and studied beneath the vast sky. Perhaps the most enduring symbol of Babylon's wisdom was the Code of Hammurabi, one of the earliest known sets of written laws. Though Hammurabi's reign had passed centuries before Babylon's greatest heights, his laws remained etched into memory, quite literally carved into stone. Picture it, a tall stele of black basalt, smooth and unyielding, rising like a monument to order itself. At its top, a carving shows Hammurabi standing before Shamash, the sun god of justice. From the god's hand flows authority, and beneath it the laws unfold, hundreds of them, written in cuneiform script, covering everything from trade to family, from property to punishment. The laws were strict and at times harsh, but they carried a simple truth, that life required balance, fairness, and accountability. To the people of Babylon, the code was more than rules. It was a foundation. It gave shape to their society, offering structure in a world where rivers could flood and empires could shift. But law was only one part of their wisdom. Babylon was also a place of learning. In quiet rooms lit by oil lamps, scribes bent over clay tablets, pressing stylus into soft surfaces that would later be hardened by the sun. These tablets carried words, numbers, prayers, contracts, and poems. Thousands have survived, whispering across time the thoughts of a civilization that refused to let knowledge slip away. Schools, often attached to temples, trained young scribes in this art. Students copied lines again and again, their tablets covered with neat wedges and strokes. They learned mathematics, not in abstract form, but in practical measures of grain, land, and trade. They developed systems of calculation, dividing the circle into 360 degrees, an echo of their sexagesimal, base 60 mathematics, which still shapes our time and geometry today. And above all, they studied the heavens. From the flat rooftops of Babylon's homes and from the terraces of its ziggurats, priests and scholars gazed upward, night after night. They watched the slow drift of stars across the sky, the regular rising and setting of planets. They marked eclipses, tracked the movements of Venus and Jupiter, and aligned their temples with the turning of the seasons. To them, the sky was a vast tablet, inscribed not with wedges but with light. The gods, they believed, spoke through the heavens, offering signs of prosperity, warning of danger, or promising renewal. Yet, even as their work was bound to religion, it was also deeply scientific. They charted patterns, predicted celestial events, and created some of the earliest star catalogs. Babylonian astronomy would echo through centuries, influencing Greek thought, Islamic scholarship, and beyond. But wisdom was not only found in law and the stars. It was also carried in stories. Epic tales, like that of Gilgamesh, were copied and preserved, their verses telling of kings and floods, of friendship and loss, of humanity's longing for immortality. These stories were read aloud in temples, in homes, in schools, shaping the imagination of a people who knew that knowledge is more than numbers and rules. It is also the art of memory and meaning. Imagine sitting in one of these schools or temples, the air heavy with the scent of clay and oil. You hear the scratch of stylus on tablet, the murmur of priests reciting star patterns, the steady voice of a teacher reading from an ancient epic. Outside, the city hums with daily life. But here, in these quiet spaces, Babylon reaches beyond the present, stretching into eternity through words, symbols, and constellations. The wisdom of Babylon was not perfect, nor was it always gentle, but it endures, carried forward in fragments of clay, in the angles of our circles, in the rhythms of our calendars, and in the stories that still stir human hearts. And as you drift with these thoughts, you can almost feel the slow turning of the stars above you. The same stars the Babylonians watched with wonder, the same sky under which they sought answers, order, and hope. The people of Babylon, faces of an ancient city. When we imagine Babylon, it is easy to see only the grand, the ziggurats that pierce the sky, the gates of blue and gold, the vast armies and powerful kings. Yet beneath this grandeur lay something more essential, the lives of its people. For a city, no matter how mighty, is only as real as the breath of those who walk its streets. Let us wander, slowly and quietly, through the lives of Babylon's inhabitants, the merchants and traders. In the bustling heart of the city, the markets pulsed with energy. Merchants called out in voices trained to rise above the crowd, offering baskets of figs, jars of honey, bolts of dyed wool, and beads of lapis lazuli. Their goods came not only from the fertile soil of Mesopotamia, but from distant lands reached by caravan and river. From the east, spices traveled across deserts. From the north, timber floated down rivers. From the south, gold and ivory arrived by ship. To be a Babylonian merchant was to be both a businessman and a storyteller, for every item carried with it the story of its journey. Tales of mountains crossed, seas sailed, and strangers encountered. Coins were not yet common, so trade was often a matter of weight and measure. Clay tablets recorded debts and agreements, the neat wedge-shaped marks of cuneiform sealing promises made under the eyes of the gods. In this world, trust and reputation were as valuable as silver. The artisans and builders beyond the market stalls, the sound of craftsmanship filled the air. Hammers struck bronze, chisels carved stone, and looms clicked with rhythmic precision. Babylon's artisans were the lifeblood of its beauty. Potters shaped clay into vessels, smooth and sturdy, then fired them in great kilns. Weavers worked at their looms, producing fine fabrics that wrapped nobles and commoners alike. Jewelers set gemstones into golden bands, capturing the sparkle of the stars in something small enough to be worn on the hand. And then there were the builders, the laborers and craftsmen who raised the mighty structures of Babylon. They mixed clay with straw to form bricks, baking them beneath the sun. Layer upon layer, brick upon brick, the city's walls rose as steady hands and sweat turned dreams into permanence. These were the quiet creators of Babylon's grandeur, their names forgotten, but their work immortal. The farmers and shepherds. Yet most Babylonians were not merchants or artisans. The vast majority lived beyond the walls, tending fields and herds. Picture the flat, fertile plains where the Tigris and Euphrates spread their waters. Here, farmers bent their backs to the soil, guiding wooden plows drawn by oxen. They planted barley and wheat, tended to groves of date palms, and irrigated their land with channels carved from the rivers. The rhythm of their lives was tied to the earth. When the rivers rose, they rejoiced at the water that nourished their crops, though they also feared the floods that could sweep away their work. In the evenings, as the fields grew quiet, shepherds returned with flocks of sheep and goats, their bells soft against the twilight air. These farmers and herders rarely saw the grandeur of the city's palaces, yet they sustained it. Their harvests filled its granaries, their animals provided its wool and milk. Babylon stood tall only because of the humble labor of those who lived beneath the open sky. Women and families. Within homes, life unfolded in rhythms both tender and practical. Women played central roles, grinding grain, weaving cloth, preparing meals, and raising children. Some became priestesses, scribes or merchants in their own right, taking part in the commerce and spiritual life of the city. Children, meanwhile, chased one another through courtyards, their laughter rising above the hum of daily chores. Some would be sent to temple schools to learn the art of writing. Others would follow their parents' trades. A boy might dream of becoming a scribe or a soldier, while a girl might be trained in managing a household or assisting in family business. Families gathered at dusk, sharing bread and dates, listening to stories told by firelight. Myths of gods and heroes mixed with everyday tales of crops and neighbors. In these moments, the grandeur of Babylon shrank to something more intimate. The warmth of human connection, the comfort of belonging. The foreigners' and travelers' Babylon was not only home to its native people. As the empire grew, its streets welcomed, and sometimes absorbed, foreigners. Traders, envoys, and even captives came from distant lands. Egyptians, Persians, Greeks, and Jews walked its avenues. Some arrived willingly, drawn by opportunity. Others came by force, taken in conquest, their lives uprooted. Yet all left their mark. The languages of Babylon were many, its customs a blend of old traditions and new influences. It was a place where cultures met clashed and mingled, a true crossroads of the ancient world. The invisible hands of the city. And then there were those rarely spoken of, the slaves. They built, served, and labored, often with little hope of freedom. Some were prisoners of war. Others sold themselves or their children into bondage during times of famine. Yet even in silence, their presence shaped the city. Without their work, Babylon's grandeur would have faltered. The pulse of Babylon. To walk the streets of Babylon was to see all of this life woven together. The laughter of children mingled with the bargaining of merchants. The hammer's ring echoed against the chant of priests. Farmers passed through gates with baskets of grain, while travelers told tales of distant mountains. It was a city of faces, sunburned, wrinkled, painted, weary, hopeful. Each one played a role in sustaining the gate of the gods, even if history forgot their names. And so, when you think of Babylon, think not only of its kings or its towers. Think of the potter shaping clay at dawn, the farmer leading oxen through muddy fields, the child tracing her first cuneiform marks in clay, the mother whispering a lullaby beneath the desert stars. For it was these quiet lives, countless and unrecorded, that gave Babylon its true strength. The hanging gardens, myth and memory. Among the 7 wonders of the ancient world, none has captured the imagination quite like the hanging gardens of Babylon. They are spoken of in whispers, sung of in poems, and painted in the colors of dream. Yet their reality remains uncertain, a delicate blend of history and myth. Let us step slowly, gently, into this legend, as though walking through a garden suspended between heaven and earth. The origins of the legend, the earliest stories, tell us that the gardens were built by King Nebuchadnezzar II, the mighty ruler who raised Babylon to its greatest splendor. According to one tale, he built them for his queen, Amytis of Media. Amytis had grown up in a land of rolling green hills and lush valleys. When she came to Babylon with its dry plains and dusty winds, she longed for the forests and mountains of her youth. To soothe her sorrow, Nebuchadnezzar ordered an impossible vision to be made real, a garden that would rise high above the city, filled with waterfalls, fragrant flowers, and trees that seemed to touch the sky. Whether the tale is true or merely a story told by later generations, the image has lingered across centuries, a testament to love, memory, and longing. The dream of the gardens, imagine them as the ancient writers described. Terraces of stone, layered one upon the other, rising like a green mountain in the heart of the city. Vines spilled down from the heights, their leaves shimmering in the sunlight. Fruit trees bent beneath the weight of figs, pomegranates, and dates. Flowers from every corner of the known world bloomed in vibrant colors, filling the air with sweetness. Water, the lifeblood of this oasis, flowed from hidden channels. Some say an ingenious system of pumps lifted it from the Euphrates River to the highest terraces, allowing waterfalls to trickle down in sparkling sheets. The sound of flowing water mingled with birdsong, creating a harmony that soothed the heart. To walk through such a place would have been like stepping into paradise itself. The mystery of their existence, and yet no ruins of the gardens have ever been found. Ancient historians, Greek and Roman alike, wrote of them, but Babylon's own records remain silent. Some scholars believe the gardens were never in Babylon at all, but in Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrians. Others think they were a poetic invention, a symbol of fertility and abundance, rather than a real structure. Perhaps the gardens existed, only to be washed away by time, their bricks melted back into earth, their plants long since turned to dust. Or perhaps they were always a dream, an idea so powerful it did not need to exist to endure. A symbol of Babylon, whether real or imagined, the Hanging Gardens came to symbolize Babylon itself, a city of marvels, where human ambition dared to rival the gods. They represented not only beauty, but mastery, the power to tame nature, to raise rivers into the sky, to turn desert into paradise. For later generations, Babylon was remembered less for its markets or its kings, and more for this dreamlike wonder that seemed too beautiful to be real. The gardens in memory. Close your eyes and picture it. The air cool with the mist of waterfalls, the pathways shaded by vines. Imagine a queen walking among the terraces, her sadness soothed by the sight of greenery rising above the barren plains. Picture a king gazing upon his creation, proud not of conquest or power, but of the joy it brought to the one he loved. Perhaps the gardens were never more than a story, but sometimes stories are what endure the longest. The Hanging Gardens lived not in stone or soil, but in memory, imagination, and the quiet longing for beauty in the midst of hardship. A wonder beyond time. As we leave this chapter, let the Hanging Gardens remain not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a gift to the mind. Whether they once stood above Babylon's walls, or only in the pages of history, they continue to inspire. They remind us that humanity has always dreamed of creating paradise, places where nature and imagination meet, where the ordinary world becomes extraordinary. And perhaps that is the true wonder of the Hanging Gardens, not whether they existed, but the fact that even today they still bloom in our minds. Babylon's legacy echoes through time. Even after the dust of centuries has settled, the spirit of Babylon continues to breathe. Its gates, its walls, its gardens, its ziggurats, all may have crumbled or vanished, but their memory lingers, carried in stories, stars, and human imagination. Babylon's legacy is not merely in stone or clay. It is found in law, in the Code of Hammurabi, whose principles echo through modern justice systems. The careful study of the stars, astrology, and astronomy began here, guiding not only harvests, but also shaping human curiosity about the cosmos. Think of the great poets and storytellers who preserved its epics. The Epic of Gilgamesh, written on clay tablets, still whispers tales of friendship, loss, courage, and longing for immortality. These stories remind us that human emotions, love, grief, ambition, remain unchanged across time. Babylon's voices still speak, through the ages, to those who will listen. The city also shaped art and architecture. Its walls, adorned with colored tiles and reliefs, set a standard for beauty and symbolism. Its ziggurats inspired towers across the ancient world. Even today, artists and architects look back to Babylon for inspiration, seeking to recreate the harmony between human creation and the natural world. And then there is the wonder, the Hanging Gardens, the gates of blue brick, the temples reaching to the sky. Whether fully real or partly imagined, these wonders teach us the power of human imagination. They remind us that people have always strived to create something transcendent, something that lifts the heart and captures the mind. But perhaps the most profound legacy of Babylon is its people. for every king and priest, every merchant and farmer, every child playing in the courtyards, their lives intertwined to create the living, breathing city. It was their labor, their creativity, their devotion, and their curiosity that gave Babylon life. In remembering them, we remember that greatness is often built not only from monumental bricks and arches, but from quiet, everyday deeds. As you picture Babylon now, let it exist both in reality and in dream. Walk through its markets, feel the cool shade of ziggurats, hear the soft murmur of water from the hanging gardens. Imagine the hum of daily life, children laughing, birds singing, artisans shaping clay, priests gazing at the stars. And when the sun sets over the Euphrates, and the stars emerge in the clear night sky, remember that Babylon's story continues. It lives in our dreams, in our stories, and in the endless human quest to understand the world, to build beauty, and to leave something lasting behind. So as you drift toward sleep, let Babylon rise gently in your mind, not as a distant ruin, but as a living city of wonder, of wisdom, and of endless possibility. The echoes of its streets, gardens, and temples carry softly, like a lullaby from across the centuries, reminding you that history is not only to be learned, but to be felt, to be imagined, and to be carried quietly in the heart.